What's up, everyone? Alex here, and I found this book at Barnes and Noble while looking through books about gender and things that have to do with gender and all that. And I found this book that I wanted to start reading and talking about called What's Your Pronoun? Beyond He and She by Dennis Barron. I just kind of like stopped at Barnes and Noble with no like real plan, and this book has like a history of pronouns, including like neo-pronouns from like the 1800s, and I think older than that. So I thought that I might kind of introduce the book. I don't think we're doing like a read and response type thing, I guess. Just like looking for feedback on this book. We're both gonna learn both me and you all are going to be like learning something new, because I like that this is all in one place. If you look up like non-binary pronouns or neo-pronouns on like Wikipedia, you don't get like a full history. A lot of these aren't included on that page. You'd have to like kind of look around, and there's like articles online about like different types of pronouns, but not all in the same place like this. I'm going to give like a summary of the introduction here. It really just opens up with like explaining that pronouns are a big thing right now, in terms of like normalizing gender pronouns for people, normalizing saying like, hey, my name is this, I use these pronouns. So it uses so many different examples of pronouns here, explaining today's sudden interest in personal pronouns. It says that today's sudden interest in personal pronouns is tied directly to the recent focus on gender inclusivity, non-binary gender, and gender nonconformity. And then there's a whole section here that talks about how for a while the generic he, him pronoun was a gender-neutral pronoun to mean like everybody, and just like a list of like why that doesn't really work as an all-inclusive pronouns. Starting in the 18th century, a few adventurous souls thought that the best way to deal with the missing word would be to invent one. The missing word referring to like a missing pronoun that's all-inclusive of everybody, and not necessarily they, them, because a lot of people don't really identify with the they, them pronouns, or with the plural grammar of those. So it's saying that dating back like before the 1970s and even before like 1900, there were pronouns that were presented as options for like, hey, if you don't like him, her, or they, we've got other pronoun options: him, her, or they, he, her, or they, she, he, she, they. There we go. Or it would have been him, her, and them. Wow. There's a lot of basics here to kind of help people understand pronouns that are outside he, she, and they. So, like, there's notes on where the sources came from, talking about pronouns in other languages, talking about, let's see. It goes into the basics and then goes into, like, the history of specific pronouns. It goes over the generic he and the history of that and how that did not work well for women in, like, the legal system. Singular they. The generic she, which is underneath it, says this option is even less popular, and it provides examples as to how you use like the general he or the general she. Avoiding pronouns to talk about people, using the gender neutral one as in like oneself, and then it goes into talking about coining new pronouns, and it replaces it's got like sample sentences, and it replaces some of the pronouns with different ones to show how the sentence structure works and how the pronouns are used. There's a very long section on like the problem with using the generic he with laws and legislations. So one of the earliest coined pronouns here, I guess, this says 1884 was a golden year for gender-neutral pronouns. In the spring, William D. Armes, an instructor at the University of California at Berkeley, issued a call for a new pronoun that would express personality without denoting gender, while avoiding singular they and the wordy he or she. It was not long after that when Charles Crozet Converse, who was a lawyer at a well-known hymn and as well as a well-known hymn writer, announced in the popular literary magazine The Critic that he had coined thun, which is that and one combined, to fill the pronoun gap in English. One of the last pronoun flags that I did for a video used the thun pronouns. They are from the 1800s. This was proposed and printed in magazines and newspapers to talk about just like proposing this new pronoun. And I guess it was a huge step in introducing the idea of brand new pronouns that are outside he, she, they, because that was kind of unheard of before that. I mean, language and pronouns have always changed, but this was something really big. So that's what this is going over, just the whole history of it. In a book called A Standard Dictionary of the English Language, Volume 2, it explains the thun pronoun, and it says the definition and the usage: that one, he, she, or it, a pronoun of the third person, common gender, a contracted and solidified form of that one, proposed in 1858 by Charles Crozet Converse of Erie, Pennsylvania, as a substitute in cases where the use of a restrictive pronoun involves either inaccuracy or obscurity, or its non-employment necessitates awkward repetition. The following examples, first as ordinarily written and afterward with the substitution of the genderless pronoun, illustrate the grammatic deficiencies of the English language in this particular and the proposed method of removal. So, example sentence here: if Harry or his wife comes, I will be on hand to meet him or her, or whichever appears. Each pupil must learn his or her own lesson, with the substitution of thun. If Harry or his wife comes, I'll be on hand to meet thun, as in that one who comes. Each pupil must learn thun's lesson, as in his or her own. Yeah, and then it goes into kind of like the error of using the gender neutral they and how it doesn't always work as a pronoun. And this goes into a lot of coined pronouns after that. 1884 was the year of thun, and then we had the pronoun hisser, which is his or her blended together, which doesn't really fit with a lot of people because a lot of people are not his or her and don't feel like they identify with both at the same time. That was introduced as a new gender neutral pronoun that did not quite work for a lot of people. There's a lot of very similar blending of he and her together. 1890 we had he, hes, and hem, so it's similar to the he and him, but a little more gender neutral, but still it still has echoes of the he, him pronouns. So some people may like a lot of these pronouns, specifically ones that are based off of him or her, but like the he, hem pronouns, she, shem pronouns. I've seen a lot of similar ones to that. But the importance is that there's options. There are options being introduced. If one thing doesn't work, then you make something else that fits. If something does not call to you, then make something that does. That's the whole point that this book is trying to present in this beginning-ish section. We're getting into the middle of the book right now. I'm just kind of flipping through and kind of pulling bits and pieces of the book to show what the book is about and what it's trying to teach. And of course, critics of word coinage typically argue that in order to succeed, words must arise naturally and spread across a speech community. Before a word to arise naturally, first someone has to create it, and other people have to find it useful enough to repeat it. The neighbor with her motorcycle just drove by. I don't know why she keeps coming and going like that, because that's the third time that I've heard that. So sorry about that. It picks up on the mic and I can't help it. We got really thin walls. It's true that most purpose-made words achieve only limited popularity or fail outright. outright, but words like Google and Xerox show that some recently invented words may thrive as well. These coined gender-neutral pronouns failed because not enough people adopted them. Some of these pronouns never reached a wide audience. Others looked too strange on the page, sounded too foreign to the ear, or proved too difficult to decode or pronounce. Thun and here are notable for getting into dictionaries, though that did not help them succeed. Here is Heer, and it's another... it was coined around the same time that thun was coined. Here, as in HIR, like Z here, enjoying some resurgence as a non-binary pronoun, is now in the Oxford English Dictionary, and Z has been approved for international use as a high-value two-letter word by the Collins Scrabble Dictionary. Though as the book goes to press, it is still waiting approval by the Merriam-Webster Official Scrabble Players Dictionary, which governs U.S. competition. Okay, so Chapter 4, Queering the Pronoun. I am not going to... I'm just going to be reading some of the sections later on in this chapter. So under this chapter, the politics of non-binary pronouns, trans pronouns, and the law. This one's a pretty extensive section. And then this section here under chapter 4, a short list of pronouns. And it's got she, he, z, a as in am, per as in person, hue, which it comes from like the hue pronouns, like human, they, like they, them, they, and fey. And then it's got like how to conjugate. I guess you conjugate pronouns, how to conjugate them. So the, like subject pronoun, object pronoun, possessive, reflexive. It tells you how to use them in a little chart. But of course, there is a section a bit later on after this that lists sort of the timeline of coined pronouns. Like when pronouns first started being introduced, like new pronouns that people were not commonly using. So in the 1800s, and then it just has a whole timeline on like, this is when this pronoun was coined, and then these ones, and then this, into the 1970s, into the 90s, 2000s, and like beyond that too. There are still pronouns being coined. 2019, at a concert for the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising, Lady Gaga tells the audience, ask the question, what's your pronoun? For a lot of people, it's really hard, and their pronouns aren't respected or they're not asked. And then there's like a link to an article about this happening. So, wow, that is it. And then it goes into the acknowledgments in the back. If you're looking for specific pronouns and their usage, it's got like the index has everything you need. And that is, I mean, that's pretty much this book. I didn't give away too much that was in here, but if you want a history on pronouns that are other than he or she and the history of them, and how to use them, it's good for people who are already familiar with this. It's also good for people who kind of want the basics on gender-neutral language and pronouns. So please, please check this book out. It's What's Your Pronoun? I'll show the cover again, but What's Your Pronoun? Beyond He and She by Dennis Barron, and he even puts his pronouns at the bottom, which is really, really cool. So I got this at Barnes & Noble, but I bet you could find it like anywhere. If you look at like online on Amazon and stuff, you can find it. So let me know what you think. And I guess, I mean, comment down below. What are your pronouns? I want to see what pronouns everyone is using. I use he, him, and tentatively thinking about AM pronouns from the 1970s or 1980s. I can't remember where the hell they came from. Those are the Spivak pronouns that were introduced for like an online forum as like a gender neutral option. Oops, I'm so sorry. My phone is ringing, but I've got to go now. So I'm signing off for now. See you later.